Metro Talk. I'm Kent Shuffle. Thanks for being with us. Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph, is alongside. Welcome, Jim.
Hi, Kent.
And Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch, is here as well. Welcome, Pat.
I can't.
Pat, legislation has been introduced that would allow people to record police while they're doing their job. Right now, you could use your cell phone to take video of those officers during a traffic stop, during some activity that they're doing. But if you include audio, you've broken the law. Is this proposed change that would allow audio a good change?
I wrote a column about this a while back. I think most people probably would be amazed to know that it is in fact illegal to audio tape a police officer or a prosecutor, even in a public place, doing their jobs. The law, I think, is insane. The law against it makes no sense at all. The most powerful person in the world, to me, on a one-to-one basis, is a cop. He's got a gun and he has the legal authority to kill me. Even the President of the United States doesn't have the power to point to me and say, kill that guy. On his own discretion in the moment. It has to be that way, unfortunately. But it also requires us to have an enormous level of accountability for police officers who carry that gun and carry the power and the stick and the power to maliciously arrest people and beat people up. There are not a lot of bad cops, but there are plenty. And as I wrote in the editorial, anybody who wants to wonder what the world is like without police accountability, just go on Google and Google police beating or something. You can find video after video after video, mostly with audio tapes, that ended up in discipline or firings of police officers who went over the line, who might have gotten by with it if a bystander didn't happen to have the ability to make the record. Now, pretty much everybody these days has a camera phone with a video and a recorder, and they can make that record. But in very few places, I think Maryland may have a similar law, but except for that, Illinois stands alone in making it a felony to hold a police officer accountable in the moment for what he's doing. I mean, if the cop is murdering somebody in front of you, it's still a crime, sort of. I believe there's an exemption in the law that you can do it if you believe that he is doing something wrong, and as I understand it, that it's aimed at you or your family. So if you're my wife and he's beating on you, it's, I guess, technically okay for me to videotape, but we're not related, so I guess you'd be out of luck. I mean, this law is crazy. It needs to be fixed. It ought to be fixed. Cops don't like it. They operate in a highly error-prone arena where they want as much discretion to make a mistake as they can, because the consequences of a mistake are terrible, and because having to make split-second decisions almost means a certain number of mistakes, and you live in a fishbowl now. Everybody's got a camera. If I were them, I might not like it either, but I think democracy demands nothing less than the accountability of the police. This is a wonderful tool for accountability. It doesn't invade anybody's privacy. It allows you to record what you would otherwise be hearing in a place that you're entitled to be. This isn't wiretapping. This isn't secret recording. This is recording what's out in the plain public, and I think the law makes perfect sense.
I would assume there would be times when that audio could help the officer. If you weren't able to see the officer's face, that officer might be telling a subject to halt, to sit down, whatever. Without that audio, you don't know it.
I'm sure there are cases where it is, and the officer makes a traffic stop on my car, walks up, and very likely has a dashboard camera with an audio receiver and a microphone on him to transmit our conversation back to the car because he's exempt, but I'm not allowed to do the same thing. I think the courts would strike this down if a case got that far, and mostly when people have been charged with it, they've been acquitted. This is not a law under which there have been a lot of prosecutions. It's not a law under which there have been a lot of convictions, but on the other hand, it's not been tested a lot, and with the proliferation of the cameras and the audio devices that pretty much everybody has in his pocket or her purse, it's going to be a growing issue, and one that probably ought to be addressed sooner rather than later.
Jim, there's a proposal that would allow people to produce audio recordings as well as the video recordings of officers doing their job. Should that be allowed?
Absolutely. As Pat pointed out, there was, Illinois was one of 2 or 3 states that basically still had this law on the books. To coin a phrase from Ivory Soap, 99.99% of cops are pure, but there's always that 1/100th% that can cause problems. As Pat pointed out, some of the police departments, especially the union groups, don't like the idea of the law changing. I kind of take umbrance with that if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't have a problem with it. One of the officials said that He's concerned that people with video cameras would be in their faces trying to, get close-ups and so forth. With older technology, I might have thought that could have been a problem where even the basic cell phone now you can zoom in and has pretty decent audio quality. It's not like the old Super 8 video cameras or the big clunky video cameras that we even had as recently as 10 or 12 years ago. The bad cops are the ones that potentially are going to be most affected by this. If they're concerned that they may have stepped over the line, they're the ones that are going to be concerned about this law. I think of probably the most famous of these types of recordings, the Rodney King beating case in LA, which ultimately led to the discipline of those police departments and unfortunately caused riots and so forth. But those cops never would have been disciplined because it would have been their word against, in that particular case, Rodney King, and Rodney King would have been made out to be the liar. Of course, he was, he was going to be the bad guy and the cops were going to be the good guys. The good cops are not going to have anything to worry about. Because if I'm sitting in my car and I see somebody roughing up Pat and I take video of it, then the court can decide whether or not that's admissible, should a case go forward. Just because I have it doesn't mean there's anything to it or anything will be done with it. If I'm shadowing police departments thinking that I'm going to get some type of video to post to YouTube or sell to some TV station somewhere, I'm pretty quickly going to be told by that police department that that's not really smart on my part to be following them around. And if I have a video camera and I'm in your face and you're the arresting officer, I can be charged for interference with the duties of the officer or basically there are all kinds of charges that I could be charged with other than the class 1 felony of audio taping a cop. If I'm in their face and I'm interfering with a lawful arrest, there's all kinds of things all kinds of circumstances that I'm going to face. It's just one more opening of what should be not only a reporter shield law that reporters could do this or photographers could do this, but also the general public, because they're the ones that are most likely to encounter this type of behavior. If I have a photographer, John Badman's running around and he has a lens pointed at the Alton cops, they all knew who he is, or with Alto cops or whoever. But somebody sitting quietly in their car with an iPhone, that could change that behavior just a little bit.
And I would assume most officers anymore realize that unless you're in the middle of nowhere, there's an excellent chance that a security camera or something may be watching your every move anyway.
Chances are that you're being picked up by a security camera from a gas station or some of the municipalities that have cameras up. There's not a whole lot of privacy. I mean, you hear the story now that regardless of where you are at any point in time, you're subject to a security camera. So, as far as I know, Lewis and Clark has them all over the campus. In Great Britain, they're used extensively. They say there's very few places that you can go in London and not be on a security camera.
There are cameras in this very room.
There are.
Yeah, there's one on my hip, as a matter of fact.
Well, I mean,
We need to take a break. We'll have more in a moment.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the music program with Dr. Teresa Crane.
Have you always wanted to learn how to play the piano? Maybe you wanted to learn Beethoven's For Elise. Or maybe you like a more popular style like Jim Brickman. Or maybe you like jazzy blues. You can learn all this and more right here at Lewis and Clark Community College.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
When you open a book, you can explore new lands, make new friends, and discover new adventures. There are amazing possibilities when you open your mind to reading. Explore new worlds. Read.
60-inch screen, high definition. Football season is coming up. You can watch it right here. What do you think?
I'll take it.
Huh? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
You're right. I don't need it.
This is Metro Talk. I'm Kent Sheffel. Pat Gowan and Jim Schrader are here. Jim, the Paul Simon Policy Institute down in Carbondale says it may be time to start looking at expanding sales tax. They say that a poll shows that majority of the people now favor the possibility of a sales tax. Should we look at that sales tax as opposed to additional income taxes or other kinds of taxes to help solve the state's economic problems?
Well, I think in part this is something that needs to be looked into due to the amount of e-commerce or internet sales that's going on. If I go to Kohl's and buy a new sport coat, I pay Illinois state sales tax, and I pay the city tax of Alton and all of the applicable taxes. If I order that sport coat from a retailer in Florida, it could be the exact same sport coat. I don't pay any sales tax. I don't pay it to the state of Florida, and I don't pay it to the state of Illinois either. 6.25% is the Illinois state tax, and then the various city taxes on that. So you may be talking about 8 or 10%. I think when you start talking about high-ticket items like electronics or computers or televisions, that could add up over the course of years to be a lot. Illinois in 2011 had the voluntary. People could basically volunteer to true up their sales tax at the end of the year.
That's when you paid the tax on that sport coat.
That's when I paid the sales tax on that sport coat. Except I don't order anything from the internet, so it doesn't. And obviously, nobody did it. It's going to be one of those things that unless the retailer is forced to collect it, it's not going to happen. As I understand the law right now, if it's an Illinois-based retailer, they have to charge Illinois state tax or Illinois tax to anybody in the state that's buying from that organization, but not out of state. So a Missouri resident can order from an Illinois business and not pay sales tax, but an Illinois resident has to. I think this is going to spread nationwide. You're going to get a lot of businesses that are doing business on the internet that somehow or another, either the states or the federal government are going to have to say, look, this is just a dodge of the sales tax. We're going to have to figure out how to collect these. The retailer is going to be responsible for collecting them because it's not going to be done voluntarily. But you are talking about probably millions of dollars to individual states over the course of a year.
Pat, the Paul Simon Policy Institute says it may be time to look at expanding sales tax. Do you think that's a good idea?
Well, Jim's point's well taken about the internet sales, and that is, I think, the big challenge frontier for taxation right now, so much being spent on the internet. The question the Paul Simon Institute was asking in this poll had to do with sales tax for services. Should we not only tax goods but services? Right now, if it costs $1,000 to fix my car, and 500 of its parts, then I pay sales tax on the parts. So what's that gonna be, about $30, $35? But I don't pay sales tax on the labor. The question here is whether people would be willing to pay sales tax on the labor too. So the $1,000 job, instead of having $30 tax, would have $60 tax put on it. You'd be paying sales tax for a haircut, theoretically, or to have the guy mow your lawn, or for any service you could think of, which right now would not be included. I don't know what they do about medical services. I would depend on what kind of bill there was, I suppose, because this is all hypothetical. But medicine certainly is a service. Would you be paying those people? I don't know what the answer is. 50%, I guess they were looking at this as something of a tipping point, but I don't know that I would go out screaming, hey, 50% of the people in a poll say this might not be such a bad idea. We ought to go out and do it. That seems like it's a little strong for the reading that you get here. One of the problems with sales taxes, of course, is they tend to be regressive. People pay them regardless of their ability to pay. There's no kind of indexing to the wages of the people. So the guy who gets the richest haircut, if he goes to the same place and pays the same price, which he probably doesn't, but the richest person and the poorest person pay the same amount of money for the haircut, would pay the same amount of sales tax. I much favor a step back, looking at taxation in general, trying to make better sense of the whole thing. What should be income tax? What should be property tax? What should be sales tax? Where is the logic in all this, rather than willy-nilly just adding taxes on top of taxes? I realize these are desperate times, but all the more reason, I think, why we ought to sort of unify the tax structure in order to get the better bang for the buck. As for services, I guess we'll see if that would be palatable, but it would be a pretty good-sized sales tax bite for people.
One of the proposals in Springfield a few years ago was the reduction of income tax in the state of Illinois. And in place of that taxation on the services, as Pat pointed out, for insurance agents or lawnmowers or haircuts, that didn't gain much momentum in Springfield and died pretty quick.
And there's no faith in this. I mean, why would you cut the income tax, increase the sales tax, when you could leave the income tax and increase the sales tax?
And add to.
I mean, people are desperate for money, and they're desperate in Springfield.
And if the state said we need to raise X millions more, would you rather see that as a sales tax or an income tax?
I think I'd rather see a study done to give me some idea what the parameters were. It's what I'm saying is to just present one thing and not a range of options, to me, is a mistake, because we end up with this fragmented, willy-nilly, nobody understands the taxation system. And I think instead of seizing the opportunity to make things better, it might make things worse.
Income or sales?
One way or the other, they're going to get the money. I guess I'd have to think that through, frankly.
We need to take a break. We'll have more Metro talk in a moment.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the radio broadcasting program in WLCA with Mike Lemons.
Have you ever listened to your favorite radio station or your favorite disc jockey and say, you know, I could do that? Or maybe you're the type of person who says, I could never do something like that. Well, with the help of first-year mass comm student John, we're going to show you just how easy it is. Each voice intro starts with talking about the band that just played, and we add a station identifier. Next, you want to offer some information that may be of interest to your audience. And finally, tell the listeners what the next song is, who sings it, followed by another station identifier. John will do one live now.
Silver Sun Pickup Substitution on WLCA. The Big Pink released their debut album called A Brief History of Love. This single is off that album. It's The Big Pink with Dominoes. It's on College Radio's Best 89.9.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
What's that? I don't know. Something I kind of made. Ooh, what's it do?
What do I do? Well, thanks for asking. I ring my bell and I like to dance. What do I do? Well, thanks for asking.
Ow! Yeah, it still needs a little work.
Anything's possible. Keep thinking. Get started on your own inventions or just play some games at inventnow.org.
Sounds like you could use some Van Gogurt. It's fortified with arts-rich nutrients to improve your math and reading skills. Catch!
Van Gogurt, thanks. So what's the deal with your ear?
Always with the ear, huh?
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
You're watching Metro Talk. I'm Kent Scheffel, Pat Gowan, and Jim Schrader here. Pat, a couple of gun issues have arisen. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel says he wants a statewide registration of handguns. Representative Dan Beiser, Senator Bill Haynes say bad idea. We're going to fight that completely. Representative Beiser has also introduced legislation that would allow retailers in Illinois to sell ammunition to Illinois residents through the mail. Your thoughts on the two?
Well, the big one, Rahm Emanuel, and the $65 registration fee for handguns. I think that's per gun, by the way.
That's per handgun.
And you'd have to register the guns anywhere in a state. And their complaint is that too many guns from outside Chicago are working their way into Chicago crimes, and that this would be a way to control it. I don't know that he would dare come to outstate Illinois and propose that in person. Too many people, too many guns. The thing I don't understand about it is Chicago is closer to Wisconsin than most of Illinois. It's also very close to Indiana. It's not so terribly far from Iowa. None of those states has registration of handguns. If they've got a problem of an influx of guns, my guess is those guns are more likely coming from Wisconsin and Indiana and Iowa than they are from Carbondale or Cairo or Collinsville. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know what kind of sway the mayor of Chicago has over the legislatures in the neighboring states, but I don't think on his say-so they're going to pass that kind of restriction. And if they don't, I don't understand what the logic is in trying to do it in Illinois. Never mind that the people downstate don't want it, and some of them have already talked about seceding from the state before he came up with this, or seceding from the northern tier of the state. So that's an element. The ammunition sale by mail, as I understand, I can buy ammunition by mail now with my Illinois Firearms Owner's Identification if it's shipped to my home address from an out-of-state vendor. But I can't buy from an in-state vendor. If I buy from an in-state vendor, then I've got to go to the premises and show my card. That doesn't make very much sense. It's not good business. I don't know whether we ought to be allowing ammunition sales through the mail at all. Frankly, I was a little surprised to learn that the mail will actually allow mail to carry ammunition. But presuming they do, it doesn't seem to me it makes any difference except for the economy of the state of Illinois if I'm buying it from an in-state source. So this seems like it's correcting some kind of mistake that must have been made at the time the original bill was passed. So it's hard for me to find fault with that.
Jim, a couple of gun issues. Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel says we need a statewide registration of handguns. Do we? Senator Hayne, Representative Beiser say they're opposed to the idea. Representative Beiser also wants to allow Illinois retailers to sell ammunition through the mail to Illinois residents.
Well, I'll take the second half of the question first. The ammunition sales by mail is absolutely, as Pat pointed out, the closing of a loophole. I can order ammunition from the other 47 contiguous states in the United States and have it mailed to my home upon supplying a photocopy of my FOID. But in the state of Illinois, if I want to buy ammunition, I have to physically go to the retailer. There was an oversight in the original law. There are a fair number of people that are heavy ammunition users that buy from reloaders and they buy from discount houses that get drop shipments, all of which are based somewhere other than the state of Illinois. This closes that loophole, and it allows the state of Illinois to collect sales tax on those ammunition sales through the mail, by the way, because it would be an Illinois-based retailer shipping to an Illinois address, so that you would get the taxes there. How popular it will be, who knows, because there are other, again, those other retailers are not collecting sales tax, but we'll see, it just closes a loophole. As to the registration of guns, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who wants to demonstrate to his constituents how tough he is on crime, has suggested that if we require people to register their handguns, that people will be good servants and good people and register their guns, so we'll know where that gun came from if it's used in a crime in Chicago. Even Mayor Emanuel is not suggesting that the bad guys in Chicago are going to register their guns. I don't think even Rahm Emanuel is that delusional. But it's been my understanding from talking to state officials and particularly state police that a pretty high number of the illegal weapons that end up in Chicago come up the highway, Highway 57, from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi. That's kind of the main north-south thoroughfare. The guns are bought relatively inexpensively with very few restrictive laws in those three states, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Mississippi, and then make a beeline north. Anybody who's smuggling guns for resale into Chicago is not going to stop at Metropolis and say, you know, I've got to stop and fill out a bunch of paperwork here for this 32 illegal handguns that I have stuffed in my trunk. It's not going to happen. I have multiple handguns. If I pay $65 a piece to register them, that makes Rahm Emanuel's math work, but it's not going to stop the bad guy in Chicago from obtaining a gun, because my guns are locked in a safe. They are pretty well secure, and it's going to be difficult for anybody to get a hold of them. And if they did, they probably wouldn't go to Chicago. They might go across the river to St. Louis.
And if they broke in to steal
Instead.
your guns, it wouldn't have mattered that they were registered.
Registered or not. All it would do is they would have a serial number to trace back. Well, guess what? All of my guns have been purchased legally, and those serial numbers already belong to me. And if somebody were to find one of my handguns laying on the street, the federal authorities could trace that gun back to the original purchaser through that serial number. In that case, that's me. So that's not going to stop anything in Chicago. It's oversimplification for people that are anti-gun, which Rahm Emanuel will tell you right now he's anti-gun. Chicago has the toughest gun laws in the state. But this is feel-good legislation. The bad guys aren't going to register their guns any more than the bad guys are going to say, well, like we're smuggling drugs, but we're going to admit it and we're going to pay taxes on it. It's just not going to happen. These guys aren't going to say, well, you know, I'm from the Bloods or the Crips and I'm going to go down and register my handguns because Mayor Emanuel says I have to.
That's going to do it for another round of Metro Talk. Thanks for being with us. Pat Gowan, one of the editors with the Post-Dispatch, has been here, along with Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph. I'm Kent Scheffel. We'll see you next time.